Hey everybody, welcome to a new show. We have with us today Patty Wood, we're going to explain why she is on the show, and this relates to our first topic. And meanwhile, how's everybody doing? How's things in Long Island, New York, Patty?
Everything's great. We have really had our first day of cool weather today, which I very much appreciate. I know that it's, partly climate change that has kind of messed up, our weather. We just drove recently to Maine, and halfway up to Maine, we still had green leaves on trees, which is unusual for this time of year.
And Keith?
Things are good here. Oh yeah, I'm enjoying the gray weather and the change of the season. We're seeing, the leaves turn. It's very beautiful fall. And yeah, it was a very green summer in spite of the heat. That's the climate change observation I make, that it was just incredibly green all summer long, even though we had just outrageous temperatures and really not much rain. And that's what I think. Anyway, yeah. It's great to be looking forward to a nice fall, and it's really nice, beautiful. We're having a bit of weather. We'll be talking about that a little bit. We're on the edge of a storm. It's coming and going.
Yes, we had our storm in the past week here in Germany. Not dramatic, but as Keith says, when I look out the window, I see there are a lot of trees still having their leaves on, right? And normally, when I go back, maybe a decade ago, at this time of the year, normally all trees are empty. Everything is fallen down. And well, I see this for a couple of years now, and but I don't think it was so late in the year that so many trees were standing there with their leaves.
All right, okay. Let's just remind everybody, if they want to get in touch with us directly, whatever platform you're watching it on, we can be contacted if you include the hashtag UHM. That's for Uphill Media. No joke. All right, and so let's get into our first topic. We have a number of topics that's going to be like the weather patterns. We have a story about the local turf war that is happening in Maplewood, New Jersey at the moment, and there's a ballot going on for November 2nd. And I see that as a kind of like a case study for things around the country, which is why I decided we'd cover it here. We also have a story that is quite amazing about the School for the Gifted, and Marcus is going to tell us about that further down the program. We have other stories you have most likely not heard in mainstream media and regarding foreign affairs and such, and we'll cover that here. All right, so as I said, we have with us Patty Wood, and she's the founder of Grassroots Environmental Education, which has been on the forefront of educating and warning about various issues with chemicals in our daily use products and so forth. She also has a program called Green Street Radio, which she casts with her husband Doug, and I believe it's on Pacifica Radio. Is that correct?
That's correct. We are syndicated now, so we are in New York on WBAI 99.5 FM, but we now are syndicated across the Pacifica stations across the country and their affiliates. Okay,
so the day before yesterday, I look at my mail, and I find this little leaflet, and I've seen signs around the neighborhood against the turf. These signs look like this: no artificial turf. I have not been particularly involved in that. But when I received this flyer, I really got rubbed the wrong way, because it makes a number of incredulous arguments. And the mere fact that it looks, the first second I looked at it, I thought it was the anti-turf campaign, because they copied exactly the same look and branding, the same color scheme, everything. That kind of threw me off for a second. But then I started reading it, and on the back of it, it said that 4 out of 5 board members were supporting the turf project. Now, this is a field we have here in Maplewood that is used by athletes and students, and unfortunately it has been flooded a number of times, had to be closed, and the usage around the year is not great in terms of a number of days, and so people have suggested to replace it with an artificial turf. This is kind of like a big deal. A lot of back and forth is happening here, and it's a matter of great controversy. To let you know, Maplewood, New Jersey is a pretty progressive community, so this is really like a interesting look at how things unfold. And this is mimicked around the country, and I'll show you the playbook of these pro-industry campaigns. So basically, the first argument this makes is it has great access. A usable field for all will increase opportunities for year-round use. Turf can accommodate 250% more usage than grass. Now, it's first of all, it's not year round. It doesn't. You can't play on it when it's snowing or when it's severe weather either way. So it's not completely a true argument here. But let's go to the second one. It says enhance life of neighboring grass fields, allow grass fields adequate time to recover and aeration while reducing disruption to practice and playing time for families. And this is kind of questionable as well. But the third one is really putting reality on its head, and that is it says it's environmentally friendly, and that goes with the style of this flyer. And it says made from recycled materials, recyclable, and use no pesticides, fertilizers, wasted water, or noisy fuel-based equipment to maintain. Now, to let you know, this is a bizarre argument, because what this field is at the current time, it's an organic field. So there's no pesticides, no fertilizers and so on used on it. In contrast, if you're putting a turf in, you have to use you have to use herbicide in order to prevent all kinds of weeds from making this surface more slippery. You have to use water to cool it down. It's not reducing water, and the whole argument of noisy equipment, you don't have to use fuel-based equipment. A lot of fields in the area have transferred to electric-based mowing and so forth. So this whole argument is kind of absurd. But this is not the first time that things are being misconstrued here. And I was going back and looked at things that were in the media, and somebody posted in the local paper, a guy called Madhu Pai, who put it this way: opinion, turfing the Hart is the name of the field, the Hart Athletic Fields would make MAP, so that's Maplewood and South Orange, a truly progressive community. And he goes on saying that basically this is the progressive thing to do, because it allows for less affluent community in that neighborhood to enjoy sports to a higher level, to a greater degree, and it enforces integration and so forth. And I found it astounding that this is being framed in such a way as if this is the pro synthetic field, synthetic turf is actually the progressive thing to do and the environmentally responsible thing to do. So to examine those things, I brought in Patty. Before that, let me just show you that little excerpt here that they say the township committee should be commended for their effort to bring in experts to address the health concerns that have been raised by community members. These experts reinforce that turf infill has evolved greatly in terms of safety and sustainability. They reiterated that there is zero, in caps, conclusive proof of negative health impact from turf. In fact, the very report cited by those in opposition of turf serve to underscore this point. The often cited EPA study on the crumb rubber infill states that, in general, the finding from the report support the premise that while chemicals are present as expected in crumb rubber, human exposure appears to be limited based on what is released into the air or simulated biological fluids. So, Patty, what do you have to say about that?
Well, that was a very thorough introduction into the current problem or situation in Maplewood. First of all, there are several components to this, and so let's just talk about why we are using these fields in the first place. These are a great way to get rid of scrap tires. We have an issue not only in the United States but all over the world with an excess number of used tires. They are very problematic for solid waste management because of their numbers, because of their flammability, their indestructible nature. They also create a fertile breeding ground for disease-transmitting mosquitoes. And so, a lot of landfills will not take used tires, and it's very difficult to get rid of them. So there's a considerable effort by the federal government to find uses for these recycled tires. And historically, they've been used for fuel. They actually have been burning them for the paper and cement industries. They've used them for road construction materials, drainage fields, and so on. But because the number is growing, they have discovered a relatively new use for them, and that is to use them as ground up material, also known as crumb rubber, to cushion a synthetic turf field. This was like a aha moment, right, for the industry. All of a sudden, they're going to get this incredibly cheap material to use in these synthetic turf fields that they're manufacturing. So we use approximately 40,000 tires in a single field. And when I say a field, I'm talking about a football field size field. The exact chemical composition of these 40,000 tires is largely determined by the intended use for the tire, where they were manufactured, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But mostly a typical tire contains about 40 to 60% rubber polymer, 20 to 35% reinforcing agencies, and a lot of carbon black, which we know is a human carcinogen. And they use lots of other additives, processing aids, plasticizers, and softeners, and so on. There are many, many chemicals of concern in these tires. They were never intended to be used in fields where children and athletes are playing and being exposed to them. How are they exposed to them? Parents will tell you that their kids come home with, a bunch of these little black rubber pieces, these little pieces of crumb rubber in their shoes, in their socks, in their hair, and so on. This is not the exposure that we're most concerned about. The exposure is the volatilization of some of these chemicals, and many of them are volatiles and semi-volatiles. And also the dust. There's a tremendous amount of dust that's created when these tires are ground up. And when kids dive onto those fields, especially soccer goalies, and kids are on those fields all the time. They don't act like adults, right? They're rolling around. They are a different species altogether. So they are very much exposed to the dust and any of those chemicals that are volatilizing. Let's talk about some of those chemicals really quickly. Human carcinogens, 1,3-butadiene, cadmium, carbon block, fluoranthene. Then we have benzene and the petroleum-based products that are in those tires. Then we have heavy metals like lead. We've got neurotoxins, manganese, mercury, phthalates, which I talked about. Those are the plasticizing chemicals. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, known carcinogens, loaded with chemicals that we should not be exposing our children to. Styrene, a human carcinogen and a mutagen. So if you talk to any toxicologist or a researcher or a doctor that is involved in chemical exposures, they will say that there is no safe level to lead, and there is no safe level of exposure to any known carcinogen. And these tires are loaded with them. So this is, something that's number one. Number one is the toxicity of the infill material. Now we move to the second health concern that is quite obvious, and that is high temperatures on these synthetic fields. We've done a lot of testing on it. One of the first comprehensive tests was done by Brigham Young University. They found that the amount of light or the electromagnetic radiation had the greatest impact on heating of the fields, actually a greater impact than the air temperature itself. So they actually measured when a 98-degree day, 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and actually measured the temperature of the surface of a synthetic turf field, and it was recorded at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Many other studies have shown anywhere from 150 degrees, 170 degrees, 180 degrees. They're all above a temperature where it is safe to play on those fields. The industry knows this, okay? The surface temperatures of synthetic turf can be higher than asphalt. And you know what it's like if you barefoot on asphalt. You have to run really quick past over the driveway to get to the grass, yep, so that you're not burning your feet. So the industry knows this, and now they sell you water cannons. When you buy the field, they also sell you an irrigation system that will cool down the field, and that usually lasts for about 20 minutes when it's a really hot day, somewhere in the 90s, like lower 90 degrees.
So, Patty, that means they have to stop the game in order to cool it?
Yeah. They stop the game. They interrupt the game numerous times on particularly hot days to cool down the surface temperature on these fields.
That's ridiculous.
So what are the heat problems? We know that you have serious issues related to heat. We have dehydration, heat stroke, heat exhaustion, but more commonly, we're finding that kids actually have second-degree burns on their feet from running on these surfaces. And this is actually through their socks and their shoes. They're getting these burns when the temperatures on the turf are dangerously high. So we've got all these, these systemic problems with the dehydration and heat stroke and exhaustion, but then you also actually are seeing burns on the soles of these athletes' feet. And that, this will be confirmed. I don't know if you remember, but the women's soccer players, the international teams, were saying, we don't want to play on synthetic turf The men got their way. The men's soccer players said, we are not playing on synthetic turf. The heat issues and the other issues involved with synthetic turf are just, totally unacceptable. And so the men all play on natural grass. And the women's soccer players basically this year just said, you know what, you've been forcing us to do this and we're not playing on synthetic turf anymore. It's too dangerous. Okay. Second thing, after the contamination from the infill is a body fluid contamination. So I noticed on that little card that they don't have to use pesticides, right? Well, the fact is that they do use pesticides, and it is in the manual when you receive your synthetic turf field and when it's all constructed, you're supposed to disinfect that field with a disinfectant, which is a pesticide. It is registered. Any disinfectant is registered with the EPA as a pesticide, not a disinfectant. It's, it sounds less scary than a pesticide, but disinfectants are pesticides. And you have body fluid contamination on these fields that is normally on a regular grass field. Okay, it's pulled down into the soil, into the soil surface where you have microbes that take care of the pathogens that may come from body fluid spills. What are these body fluid spills? Well, anybody who has played sports knows that there's a lot of spitting going on. So you have saliva, blood, sweat, vomit. All of these things are very typical on playing fields, right? Where athletes are not only playing games, but also during practices. So they say that these plastic surfaces need to be disinfected after games to ensure their safety. However, in practice, this is almost never done, if ever. And there you go. And so what do we see? We see MRSA. We see other types of bacterial infections that are difficult to treat, that go through an entire football team because they're all exposed to this pathogen on those plastic fields. Injuries. There's not really a ton of research on this, but they do know that we do have good data that joint injuries, especially ankles and knees, are more common on synthetic turf surfaces because it actually stops the joint. There's a very new injury, and one of those is called turf toe. It's actually a sprain of the main joint of the big toe. It's very, very common and very unique to artificial turf surfaces. 75% of the NFL players feel that playing on synthetic turf is dangerous, and it increases soreness, injuries, and fatigue. All right.
I have a relative, a friend that lives on the West Coast, and he was telling me their kid was playing soccer, and they were regularly injuries because of the slippage. People were slipping on this surface.
Well, they do get very slippery, especially if they're not maintained properly. And you have to understand that there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed on a regular basis if you have installed a synthetic turf field. Okay, one of the other ones that I haven't mentioned is the whole idea of the turf getting very hard as they play on it, because their feet are playing on this surface, and they're pounding the grass blades and the inferior material down. So they're supposed to be doing a Gmax rating or testing for a Gmax rating, which is the ability to absorb impact. And that changes as these materials are more compacted. And so we're talking here about things like head injuries, like concussions, that parents are very concerned about, and they occur more often and they are more severe on synthetic turf if they're not maintained properly. And the way that they maintain, they're supposed to be combing the field all the time, and they're supposed to be replacing infill material on a regular basis so that it has that Gmax rating that it had the day that it was installed. And that doesn't happen. They don't do that. There's no maintenance of those fields. You know, they think, great, we're putting down this field. We don't have to do anything. We don't
Right,
have to
that is
cut
the selling
grass.
point here. Yeah.
We don't have to do anything.
Mhm.
Yep. I'm sorry, did you
Yeah.
have a question?
No, I'm saying that is the selling point here. They're saying we should just do it so there's no maintenance cost, and they're comparing it to the existing maintenance costs. They're like saying that's the fiscally responsible thing to do.
Well, we also have a very deep background in natural turf playing fields, and we work with one of the top experts in the country on that. And his name is Chip Osborne. He actually did the National Mall in Washington, D.C. He does a lot of university campuses, playing fields, and so on. It's a really pretty simple formula. And that formula is to in this early spring, is to go in there and to aerate and overseed. You're going to do that multiple times. It's incredibly cheap to do. It's so much cheaper to maintain natural grass than it is to put that $1 million or $1.5 million into a synthetic turf field. And you have to keep spending money on those fields if you're doing it properly. But if you're just doing aeration and overseeding and using compost tea, or compost tea is the easiest because it doesn't take a couple of days to actually go down into the soil surface, but that's really all you're doing, and you're using an organic, non-water soluble, slow release fertilizer, and you can have a beautiful field like that. You have to aerate. So the investment for a natural turf field is grass seed and a really high quality aerator and a compost tea, spreader. That's it.
Yeah, locally, in particular, in this case, we had a situation where the field gets submerged in water, gets muddy, and that is because of bad construction. It wasn't constructed in a good way to irrigate water away. But instead of fixing that problem, they're thinking they're going to just put a field, synthetic field.
So they're going to have water on the synthetic turf field, a lot of water. It's going to flood the field just the way it flooded, and it will not, recede. The water will not recede as quickly as it does with natural grass. The other problem is that when you have a flooded synthetic turf field, all of those toxic little pieces of infill material, all that toxic stuff is moving off that field into the surrounding neighborhood, going down streets, into drains, wherever it's going. We have seen flooded synthetic turf fields make an incredible mess out of a neighborhood. Unbelievable. And it's all toxic. It's going into streams. It's going out into the environment where you may have sensitive ecosystems, where you're impacting wildlife and water quality.
Yes, and we're exactly.
And you know what? We have a climate crisis, and we're using these fields that are made out of plastic, which is a fossil fuel product, and they're not absorbing CO2. A huge football field made from natural grass is a carbon sink, right? It's absorbing. It's taking in carbon dioxide out of the air.
And
once
water,
you put down that plastic mat, it's over. You have lost that very valuable, large area of carbon capture.
It's at least neutral, and artificial turf certainly isn't. I mean, plastic is made out of natural gas.
And you know what? It's really, really expensive to get rid of these fields. New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation has not figured out where to put them yet, because the landfills don't want them because of the hazardous waste product, meaning the tire waste, right? These little pieces of infill material. They're not quite sure what to do with them. In Europe, what they do on these fields, these synthetic fields, they just roll up the old fields and they shove them to the side of the field. You have some fields in Europe where they have like 3 or 4 old artificial turf fields just rolled up on the side of the field. because there's nowhere to go with them. Nobody wants them. This is plastic.
Right, and the argument.
And I think the European laws wouldn't allow to use this stuff, because we are very strict with what this concerns.
Well, we know that there's synthetic turf there. We have synthetic turf fields in Italy. We have synthetic turf fields in France. They are using it in other countries, not as much as we are using it here in the United States.
And I think not next to growing fields for vegetables and stuff. I think there's also a distance which they have to keep in.
Right. Yeah. And not only does it not absorb carbon, it's not a carbon sink, but it appears dark when it's photographed from the air because of the black crumb rubber infill, and it's just like a tar roof. It contributes to the heat island effect. So it actually makes the entire region around that turf field much hotter. And it's a lose-lose situation.
Oh, that's a big deal. That's a good point. A natural grass, it consumes moisture. And so it's always evaporating into the air, and that cools things off.
That's right.
So that, you
never have that.
No.
And you touched on an important point here, that they're making an argument why it's good for the environment because it's made out of recycled material. But something to mention is nobody recycles it after this use. Whatever the field is put in place, nobody will recycle that after that. There's no recycling for that.
No, you cannot recycle that because that would contaminate the waste stream. It would contaminate a plastic recycling waste stream. But keep in mind that less than 9% of all plastic ever gets recycled worldwide.
Yeah. Right.
We're just, we're in a situation where plastics is a huge problem. It's a climate change problem. And I just wanted to mention one more thing, and I know that I'm talking maybe too much. I'm sorry, but
no, it's absolutely okay. It's very interesting.
So now they have recently discovered that these fields contain flame retardants as well as PFAS. So let's talk about the flame retardants first.
Hold on, Patty. Before we get into that, we have a whole section about the PFAS, but let's just review the points here that are negative with the synthetic turf, and that's, you mentioned the injuries, you mentioned the health risks from the chemicals. We're talked about replacement of the carbon sequestration and the oxygen generation with fossil fuel byproducts. In addition, and also that there is additional resources that are not mentioned at conception that will have to be invested in it, to the surprise of many maybe who are proponents of this. And finally, we're getting to the PFAS, to the release of forever chemicals. We've covered that forever chemicals on this show. Besides the release of microplastics to the environments, PFAS and forever chemicals have a special role. And if you've seen the movie Dark Waters, this is the materials that that movie refers to. I recommend, if you haven't seen that movie, to watch it. So it's found in 99% of human breast milk at this point and blood samples around the world. At the current rate, if we continue regulating at the current rate, it would take 40,000 years to regulate all of the PFAS chemical one by one out. And these are being used in food packaging, believe it or not. They're being used in textiles, all kinds of places, and obviously in this situation too. And basically carbon fluorine bonds, which is the basis for this, are extremely stable and they do not break down over decades. So they're going to be continuing to exist in the environment. They may be expelled out of one organism and then taken into another organism, but they're going to be in the life cycle for years to come. And what makes it worse of all is that you can't really filter it from drinking water. So it's here to stay. Once it's introduced into the environment, the neighborhoods would be affected by it. Isn't anything you have in addition to that?
so you've brought up some really important and interesting points. Now, that the PFAS chemicals, there are over 9,000 PFAS chemicals that have been registered with the EPA. Doesn't mean that, I mean, when you register a chemical with the EPA and you get an EPA registration number, you provide, meaning you, the manufacturer, provide to the EPA your own studies showing the safety or whatever it is you're showing. And it's like the fox guarding the hen house, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. And the EPA gives you an EPA registration number. They don't have a third party, you know, research facility where they're actually testing those chemicals. Anyway, so let's talk about PFAS, but also there's 3 chemicals that are actually added to the plastic. So anti-static chemicals are added because plastic is very static. Static, I want to say staticky, but players have found that, you know, they get shocked from playing on those fields. So they add anti-static chemicals as well as flame retardants, which addresses the high flammability, as well as the increasing acts of arson vandalism. So something that I saw a picture of, which really just was shocking, it was like breathtaking, was a synthetic turf field that some kids had lit on fire, and the fire department was spraying with firefighting foam. So you have, then of course, firefighting foam is one of the major users of PFAS. So it's we're trying now to change that in this country so that we're using a substitute for PFAS in firefighting foam. But in the meantime, here we have this toxic synthetic turf field with these flame retardants and the toxic infill material and the plastic and the plasticizing chemicals. And then they're putting PFAS on it with the firefighting foam. It was like, oh my God, what are they going to do with that field? Where is that toxic material going to go? But the reason that they use PFAS in the plastic for these synthetic turf fields is because they're making these little tiny grass blades, right, to simulate a real grass field. And so it facilitates the manufacturing process of the plastic grass blades going through an extruder. So it's like Teflon, right? It's easy for Teflon to go through things. It doesn't stick. And that's why they use PFAS in these fields, which just, you know, makes them even more toxic. And you did a very good job of explaining the toxicity of PFAS. From our perspective, you know, it's a extremely toxic endocrine disruptor. And as you said right here, how harmful is PFAS? So there you go. I mean, we interviewed an expert in endocrine disruption, or EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and we spent a good deal of our time talking about PFAS. So where is it found? Well, now we know it's found in synthetic turf fields. It's also found in firefighting foam. It's also found in all of your clothing that says waterproof on it. You know, you think, oh, that's great, let's get this waterproof coat. No, don't get that waterproof coat. In the United States, we actually have it as a law that all of our firefighters have to wear equipment and clothing that has PFAS in it. It's just terrifying. Anyway, so that's where we are. You know, and when you go to a store or you go to a restaurant and you take out food, and it's in a paper container, food container, it usually is lined with PFAS, PFOA usually, and it's that kind of shiny lining. That's to keep the food or the grease or the liquid in that food from going through the paper. So there's a huge exposure to PFAS in our water, in all of our waste systems, our soil. It's everywhere, and it's really problematic. And of course, when you're talking about a football field size piece of plastic loaded with PFAS, you know, as well as all those other things that we've been talking about, the industry to say that these are safe is just highly irresponsible, because who plays on these fields? Mostly children. It's
Right.
highly irresponsible for for whoever is making these decisions to
And
not
yeah.
look at this and go on to the website, the website of Mount Sinai School of Medicine, right here in New York City. We have a lot of research going on, and like I say, the school has written a grant for study of these chemicals and their impact on human health to the National Institutes of Health. And this is, something that you wouldn't do unless there was a serious concern and some good background information that we already have on the toxicity.
Right, and to me, that by itself, just the PFAS aspect is enough to nix the whole idea. Because let's look at the impacts. So you mentioned the endocrine disruptors. In addition to that, it impacts the reproductive system and the development of the fetus. So if you're pregnant, this may impact a pregnancy. It impacts the immune system and have been linked to reduce responses to vaccines in children.
It makes them less effective, the vaccines.
Right. It promotes the development of certain cancers, for example, kidney cancer and testicular cancer, and it also was linked to thyroid disease. So all fun things. If you also, there's a website, a British website, PFAS free, pfasfree.org.uk, and you can check things out there. It provides much more information. These things are real, folks. They're not like somebody just thinking, like having some doubts or some contemplation about this. This is real stuff, and it's been examined. It's been in court. So this is not a fictional argument here.
And the last thing I can say is that the work that we do to protect children, because they are so vulnerable, and why is that? Because of their still developing bodies. Their lack of certain enzymes that help to break down toxins, and pound for pound they take in many, many more toxins in food, in air, in water than we do per pound of body weight. If you compare a child to an adult, they are just they are sitting there doing what a child is supposed to do with typical hand-to-mouth behavior, and lying on the floor and playing on the grass. And these are things that children do. And by just being a child, they are disproportionately exposed. And I want to say that we actually were given the award, which is a national award, by the EPA for our work, and it was an award for Children's Environmental Health Excellence. So none of this is just crazy stuff. This is all science-based information, and we don't actually work on any issues at Grassroots Environmental Education unless we have a very substantial body of science, and we know that science is ongoing.
Yeah, and so we have this on the ballot. We're lucky that we're even being asked about it. We have that on the local ballot, November 2nd. But this gives you. I wanted to include this on our program is nationwide, but I wanted to include it because this is really exposing the playbook on this. It's unfortunate, but the playbook is to cast doubt, to switch confuse the debate. I don't know who stands to gain from it. If you want a field that is year-round to play on, have a retractable cover on it. But for God's sake, don't make this mistake and turn it into a toxic site. So we'll see how this ends up here. I've set up Oprah request and required to see the environmental study that has claimed, according to the article, that there was no impact or no zero effect. And I will get back to you when I do have more information. But at the moment, I think that people should educate themselves and know exactly what's at stake.
Yeah, and we got some comments here in chat. And Bill Gabriel is writing that he has his personal experiences with this. The Olympic track and field trials in Eugene were postponed last summer when the artificial track surface temperature hit 150 degrees. And later he says, I was at a Eugene City Council meeting where the former mayor, now on the school board, spoke up in favor of artificial turf in city parks. That's what's got my attention first on the subject. And it is terrible. I know about the rubber problem in Germany. We have the discussion for quite a long time about the rubber coming from tires, the nanoparticles which are in the air and which are harming everyone. It makes no difference if you're on a playing field or somewhere else. Another question is, what does it with the groundwater? If you've got such a big field, it also has to infect the groundwaters. And this also hits back to everyone, at least, But of course, you are right. That's people who do sports and children mostly who are, heavily concerned with this problem, And I hope you guys get the attention that the people wake up on this problem. That they, if such things are in plans somewhere, that they say no, we have to stop here. This is not in our favor. This is not in favor of our community. We got to stop this.
And suffice it to say that the issue is also that it's proposed in a neighborhood that is less affluent than most of the town. So that begs the question of environmental justice, and that's been they tried to get around it by putting it on its head and presenting the positive social aspects of it.
I just wanted to say that we did a really great interview with Amy Griffin, who is a former American soccer player on the American team, but she's now a soccer coach in Washington State, and she has been putting together a database of mostly soccer players who have developed cancers, especially blood cancers, leukemia and lymphoma, and from playing on these fields. And it's an amazing number of players that we are finding with this type of cancer. And I did ask one of the doctors that we work with at Mount Sinai, what he knew about it. And he said that a blood cancer would show up sooner than a solid tumor. So she is working with college students who are in their 18, 19, 20s, early 20s. And some of them have been playing soccer since they were, in third grade, right? So this would be the right timing, the right latency period between exposure and onset or disease endpoint. Yeah. So that's a very interesting interview, and I might actually send you the link to that.
Okay,
so
that would be great. Yeah. So we have to be, as progressives, we have to be very media literate, because things are thrown completely on their head on a daily basis. We need to know what we're talking about, and that's a very important thing to do. Patty, thank you so much for joining us. Your input was very insightful.
Yes, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
All right, so let's get into our next topic. over here. So
Before we do, let's just talk about this. I got a few questions for you about this, Amos.
Yes.
You put up one slide when you introduced that, it had a URL on it, and I went to it. And so I'm looking at this improveourfields.com.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at a pretty slick website. I would say there's a few $1,000 worth of development into this.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's saying that your township committee voted 4-1 to draw up plans to make the grass athletic field, but some rabble-rousing, tongue in cheek there, people have demanded this special ballot. So apparently this is being put out by some people that are very well organized and want the field very badly.
It appears that way. I was posting locally, and I was raising the question whether who is behind it. Like, why would they be so desperate to put out something spend so much money and put something so deceitful? And I was musing who is to gain from it, and someone suggested that they think that who stood behind was the companies themselves, the turf manufacturers that are putting this project up, which is possible, but you can't know because they have not put any information on the leaflet whatsoever onto who is to sponsor it. And if you look at any,
you can't know.
I think legally,
this is like there are other problems like related to this. Like we've got something going on in our city, and I've seen it elsewhere where like take the robot ticket cameras at intersections that like mail you $100 ticket for having to avoid, say, a drunk woman walking across the street.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of businesses that go to, say, local governments, and they seem really good at selling whatever it is they want to local government, and local government seem very willing to spend our money. And that's kind of an issue I really noticed about local politics, is that you elect these people, and they think they're really important. And one of the things you do when you're important is, you hire other people, you spend money, and so some business comes along and say, hey, better than grass. And they go for it,
right.
Kind of an ego thing, when really, what is better than grass? Nothing.
But Keith, what I was pointing out here is I think, if I may be wrong, but I think that it's a matter of campaign law that you have to have a disclosure of who is funding a particular ad. And if you look at the sign at the bottom, it says this you can't see it, it's too small, but it says this sign has been produced with recyclable number 5 plastic. And it says it's been paid for by da 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 da. So I think that they're in violation of campaign law. This is a political issue at this time, and they've not given any information of who is funding this campaign. Anyway, let's launch into our next topic. We spent a bunch of time on this one, so you want to take us in there?
Yes. Well, you see there, take a look out of the window, it's sunny, a little bit rainy, and suddenly, it's getting heated and it's getting a little bit watery, if you want to. This is what we have to expect. And surprise, surprise, the American Intelligence Agency sat together, and they put their big brains together, and they came to an absolutely surprising assumption. It was in the Washington Post, the article. It says the White House Intelligence Agency's Pentagon issue reports warning that climate change threatens global security.
I'm shocked.
Yes, really, and
that's news to me.
Well, I chose little parts from the article. I would like to read them out because some things are there which are, crazy, and I don't know. Yes, let's start. The Pentagon report in particular marks a shift in how the US military establishment is incorporating climate issues into its security strategy, analysts said. Until now, when the Defense Department has considered climate change, it has tended to focus on how floods and extreme heat can affect military readiness rather than the broader geopolitical consequences of a warming world. Now it is worried that the climate change could lead to state failure. Wow, this is a good introduction into the topic. It goes
Syria.
on. Yes. The shift in Washington comes as militaries and security agencies around the world are accounting for global warming in their planning. At NATO, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg earlier this year made climate change a major focus of the Defense Alliance as it overhauls its strategic plans. The British military this spring unveiled a sustainability report that counts as a top-to-bottom overhaul of military operations to prepare for far more climate-related deployments in the coming decades. Yes, and the NIE, this is the gathering of all the intelligence agencies. They offer a dim assessment of the prospects for unified international action. And this is very important, I think, countries are arguing about who should act sooner and competing to control the growing clean energy transition, it states, concluding that most countries will face difficult economic choices and probably will count on technological breakthroughs to rapidly reduce their net emissions later. And this is exactly the problem we are having here,
Yep.
This is, everyone is waiting. It remembers me a little bit about the refugee crisis we had in 2015, when everyone in Europe did not dare to move. Everyone knew what was coming, what was supposed to come, that we have to expect thousands, hundred thousands of people, who are fleeing their countries. And nobody in Europe made a single move. Nobody wanted to be the first who made the wrong move, right? To do something against it. Everyone was sitting there and waiting. No, maybe we are lucky, and in this case, when it comes to climate change, the climate catastrophe, as I call it, well, there is no waiting. It will definitely come, and the arguing about who should act sooner, it is also the blame game, they're pointing fingers at others who are doing less than others, and we are big into the blame game. We have China, for example. We have Russia. We have India. India and China are countries which have a lot of potential to grow bigger. And this also causes more devastations for the climate if we don't think in other terms, right? And well, the argument is, for the Western countries, it is easy. You had all the luxury, all the things, we also want, and that's the problem. And so they might argue, the argument is, you did the most parts of the pollution, of the devastation, so you should act first, and decrease and give us the chance to develop up to a certain limit, and then we will see where we are. And all these hesitations and this competing, and you see also it states concluding that most countries will face difficult economic choices. It is mostly only about the economy. It seems that everyone in the government thinks that we cannot exist anymore without the economy. But it's the other way around. We cannot exist anymore without having a bearable weather, a livable weather, right? Well, they're coming to this conclusion, I don't know why they are coming up with this in 2021. I think this is a thing everyone who has a brain knows what would come,
And Marcus, that's a very good question. Very good question.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, one thing, like you've got resource depletion and peak oil, there have been people into that for quite a while. And, I know that the American military knew about that like 30 years ago. they've been worried about, obtaining oil for troop movements for national defense. So that they've been quite aware of, the situation in the world for quite a while. So, question I have to you is, why are they bringing this out now? Because really, the people, it's really already known.
It is known, and the article goes on. And if you count all the elements together, you will see what's going on. The article continues. The White House report on migration, which examines the way climate change is driving human movement around the world, notes that drought and other extreme weather can spark conflicts and force population displacements. And that countries, and here comes the blame game again, and that countries such as China and Russia are poised to take advantage. They are arguing that, for example, we got a heavy drought in Africa, in a country in Africa, or more countries in Africa. Then the assumption of the intelligence agencies is that China and Russia were ready to give them the needed food, the needed resources to go on. But the question is, what if such a drought is not in those conflict zones or in poor people's countries, but what if those droughts hit in Europe, hit in Russia, hit in India, in China? What then? There are no resources anymore to offer to others, and then it's the survival game is starting, right? It advocates expanding asylum and refugee programs to better take into account climate-driven migration. And it says that US policymakers need to be ready to direct funding and resources towards regions that are facing influx of migrants driven to move by extreme weather, droughts, and climate-related conflicts. It cites one report that estimated that by 2050, up to 143 million people only in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South Asia would move for climate-driven reasons. Can you imagine what this means? We had in the medievals, in the early medieval, we had the situation that the folks were wandering across Europe. Peoples were wandering across Europe. You cannot imagine what a conflict this was at that time. And at that time, Europe was not so populated as it is today. But if you see 143 million on the run, nobody, no boundaries, nothing can stop them. And it is worrying, and why are they coming out in 2021? Well, why are they coming out in 2021? I mean, it's obvious for everyone, being silent about what's obvious for everyone is no option anymore. They have to do something, and of course they are preparing to take advantage of these resources they would need, and this is what I'm afraid of. Instead of and if we are looking at the next slide, I suppose that we are continuing to do this bullshit we are seeing here. The military spending worldwide. Just imagine what could we do with all this money in serious efforts to prevent the climate catastrophe, if it is preventable at all. Because at another point, the article says that the intelligence agencies highly doubt that we would reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. It is impossible in their opinion, right? And This is how they are preparing this. It is about the resources they have to make sure. It is also what will going on in the Arctic, once it is ice free, the next conflict potential. And it is worrying, and nothing new, but is worrying, and it is now confirmed by the intelligence agencies.
I know, and whoever hasn't been paying attention to the news has been like on the eve of COP26. There's been a leak that confirms that there are countries that were trying to negotiate the framework of the convention to reduce the impact of certain climate issues such as coal and so forth, and they've actually tried to take it out of the take those things, interfere with the our scientific process that was reporting to the UN as a I think presumably that is an objective endeavor. The reports that are being prepared for the convention, but they're trying to take them out and prevent some of that to come to light in order to promote their individual countries' interest or individual countries' industries' interest. India, for example, officially their government is officially routing for use of coal, and they want to keep using coal into the future. In spite of all of this evidence, and they're very adamant about it.
It's a poker game, of course. That they say, if you expect us to get away from coal, you got to give us something for this.
No, I think they're actually intending to use coal unless they're forced to not. But that just complicates everything.
We'll see. I think if this would be even worse, if it is only if there is a military conflict about this,
Right.
and not only a poker game, which is normally the case, that those governments want to see a good amount of money and of course alternatives, and it is, it sucks in so many ways. Not only what we heard before from Patty, but if you go to the geopolitical aspect of it, it is frightening.
Yeah,
it's frightening that corporations control the government.
Yeah, but this is also no news, right? This is absolutely, Keith. But this is what can, and this is what frustrates me a lot, especially since the last election, right? Then that we found out that we have no one who is really fighting on our side, and reading and seeing all the stuff which is happening around us and happening worldwide. Makes the frustration not smaller, right?
Yeah. All right. Our next topic, Keith.
Okay. Yes. This got a video here, and we've had a lot of strikes in the country, and I just wanted to bring those to everybody's notice. So let's just play the video, and then I'll read something, and then we'll move on.
And this falls under the category of things you will not see in the mainstream media. Here we go.
Not in the mainstream, no.
Certainly have not seen
independent,
all this on CNN. That I could promise you, Professor Wolf. My producer Colin put this together. It's not just John Deere. I mean, let's just take a look at the strikes going on throughout the country right now.
A lot of healthcare workers.
Yeah. As you can see, it's not an isolated case.
No. And like you said, not on the mainstream media. And why would that be?
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for Status Quo and Jordan Sheridan for providing that. That's an excellent piece of video.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It is, well, unions, right?
We have a few.
Yes.
Not many.
But
we need
yeah.
many more.
Yes.
They need to come back.
Yes, definitely. I mean, Germany is not the paradise, but what unions concern, as I said in the past week, unions are big in Germany. They're sitting at the same table with the employers, and they have also a say in what direction a company goes. And this is exactly what America would need.
It's important that we rebuild them. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, more than 10,000 workers at John Deere walked out October 14th. It was the largest walkout since the auto worker strike at GM in 2019. 14 plants are involved, half in Iowa, the rest in Illinois, Kansas, Colorado, and Georgia. It follows on a series of strikes that rolled through different industries this fall. Thousands of workers at Frito-Lay, then at Nabisco, and then at Kellogg's hit picket lines and in states running from Pennsylvania through Michigan and Ohio, all the way out to Colorado and down to Georgia. Nurses and other medical workers in Buffalo, New York, went out on strike. So did building engineers at Kaiser Permanente in San Francisco and carpenters in Washington State. Over 1,000 coal miners in Alabama, along with 1,100 steel workers in Pennsylvania and 2,000 nurses in Massachusetts, have been engaged in long, bitter strikes for more than 6 months now. Other workers voted to set strike dates. 24,000 nurses and other medical care workers at a number of Kaiser Permanente facilities in California and Oregon, over 7,000 maintenance workers at those same facilities, over 60,000 production workers who, among other things, build sets for films and TV shows at Hollywood studios. So yeah, it's a big deal. It's not much talk is going on. There are things going on with the labor situation in America that we'll be talking about. Yeah.
Why?
What's that, Marcus?
Why Tom Hartman?
Oh, why? Well, why? Because I was listening to him this week, and I there was a very intelligent, dignified caller that came in, and I just thought we would enjoy the magnificence of this wonderful individual who had so much to say to Tom Hartman.
All right.
So
all right.
Let's listen in.
I'm curious.
Play it. It's going to start a little bit slow. Just don't worry about it. It's like 10 seconds. I should have made it cut the first 10 seconds off.
Oh, okay.
Visit TomHartman.com for audio and video archives.
So how do we, I was going to say skin this cat. That's a pretty gross metaphor. But how do we do this? Thoughts? And welcome back. Keith in Seattle. Hey, Keith, what's up?
Oh, great show today, Tom. Say, you've got a lot of numbers you've been putting out today, and I've got kind of a question. It's a general question. I want to try to make it specific to you. Okay, it's like, first I'll just say, it came to my mind, you buy something from Amazon for $39.95 and it gets shipped to you for $10. How much of that $10 is going into space? And where I'm going with this is, you've got Bezos, you've got all these billionaires who, and corporations who have been making bank during the pandemic, and the average guy is getting screwed. And there's this very strange labor shortage, which I can't really understand. I've been listening to things, but it seems rather crazy to me. And perhaps you can explain some of that, because where I'm going with this, I'm trying to figure out where we are, how much of are we on a razor's edge economically here? What's going on? Like,
I think we are. I think
we
the economy
suddenly-
is potentially in big trouble.
Okay, well that's where I want you to kind of tell us. You know, like if they took all that billionaire money that they made during the pandemic and gave it, how much would that put in their pockets? And
Well,
I'll
let's
shut up.
see.
Thank you
Jeff
very much.
Bezos made $79.2 billion in the last 19 months. Elon Musk made $184 billion. Bill Gates made $34 billion. Larry Ellison made $65 billion. Mark Zuckerberg made $69 billion. Sergey Brin, Google, made $67 billion. Warren Buffett, $34 billion. And that's just in the last 19 months. You know, their net worth now, Elon Musk is the top of the pile at $209 billion right now. Whereas in March of 2020, his net worth was only $24 billion. It's not going to fund the government, but it's a pile of money.
Well, enough to put several $1,000s in everybody's pocket is what I'm trying to say here.
That would involve trillions, or at $8 trillion anyway. I think $1 trillion would be $3,000 for everybody in America, but I may be completely wrong on that. And when I try to do math at the top of my head, I usually get things wrong. We're not going to solve this problem. You know, the really deep system, the tax problem we can solve fairly easily. The whole budget deficit and all that. You know, just undo the Trump, Bush, and Reagan tax cuts. Take us back to where we were in 1980. We had an economy that was working really well. It was helping the middle class. It was strong. It was healthy. If you just undid those 3 sets of tax cuts within a couple of years, you would see that national debt just going down like a rock. But, you know, I just don't think there's any possible way that can happen right now because the Supreme Court has given these very, very wealthy people so much political power. And now they're giving the Republican Party so much political power by saying, for example, you know, gutting in their Shelby County decision, gutting the Voting Rights Act, saying now that it's okay to gerrymander. It's just the Supreme Court has been doing everything they can now for the better part of 25 years, including putting George W. Bush in office when Al Gore actually got 500,000 more votes. And frankly, we learned a year later that Al Gore actually even won Florida. The Supreme Court has just, been taken over by the Republican Party, and they are in exchange for that, giving the Republican Party everything. They know which side their bread is buttered on, and that's the big challenge. The other big challenge right now is debt, which an earlier caller made reference to, and that's one of the reasons why we need to raise wages, and we need to end student debt. You've got $1.5 trillion in student debt out there. At least half of that, the president could just do away with an executive order. He should.
Yeah, well,
Bill
says Tom has the best callers. I tend to agree.
Thank you very much.
In this case, definitely.
Yeah. Well, he got me going, and I was checking out the Supreme Court, and yeah, that's a big thing, and he got me kind of on a roll myself, and I've been looking at, we've got a government that just supports business. They support corporations. They don't support the people. I reread the Powell memo, and I'd advise anybody to read it if you haven't, where, what Lewis Powell wrote this memo before they put him on the Supreme Court, where he basically lays out the game plan about a fascist takeover of America, essentially, by corporations and rich people. And that, very, very classist. And we've got one thing we've got to pay more attention to in America is our Supreme Court. Now, let me just go on for a moment here.
Hold on. And the thing is, if you look at the what the Supreme Court decided, it is about free speech, right? And they put free speech equal with money, and this is what absolutely shows what they are at the Supreme Court, right?
Oh yeah, because they have the
merchants.
money.
They're merchants. They're merchants. They are entrepreneurs, if you want to say so.
They're suck asses. No, here, I mean, that's a horror. Hey, when I was growing up, way back when my daddy told me, seriously, my father once told me that it was explaining life to me. and he's explaining that, judges got paid like $50,000 a year. And this is way when that was a huge, amount of money. And his explanation to me at the time, and I'll forgive him for this, was that, well, that keeps them, you give them so much money, then they won't be corrupted. Okay. Well, now I'm an adult.
Nice try.
And I happen to know that the more money you give certain kinds of people, the more money they want, and they never get enough. And that you're talking about a class of people a very small number of people who make all the decisions in America. They control everything, and that they are our upper class, and they control and they appoint their people to the Supreme Court, who are not. And what I'm saying is, I no longer look at them as the august, respectable, refined people that they would like us to believe they are. No, they are there to maintain the system as it is. However unjust it is, they are there to keep it that way.
Right, Keith, but I disagree in a bit. I don't see it as, don't take it as far. I don't think that the judges are in it for the money. I think that they have a certain worldview, certainly, and they're picked for that worldview. So it seems, it just happens to match the interest of the people in power who are promoting their own continual elections and continual power. So I don't think it's necessarily the judges, and it's not necessary to see them as personally being corrupt. I don't think they're corrupt, but they're just very. Their point of view is certainly not that one of that I can logically agree with in any way.
Well, some of them are corrupt, maybe not all of them, but I'm not sure I see the difference. I'm not sure we're really arguing about anything. It's about the money. Maybe they're not personally about it, but they support the class, which is about the money. So they're one step removed. What's the difference?
Ideologically wise, they are corrupt, in my opinion, right? Because they are not they are not doing what they were sworn in for, to be servants of the people. Nothing else is a Supreme Court judge, in my opinion, right?
Right, and this is something that came up during the Texas law, and why they refused to take it on and let it stand, and that calls into question whether they're doing the necessary public work. So yeah, in that regard, yes, but that has been not the case historically. That's kind of a new thing.
Yeah.
Do you want to take us through the history of it, Keith?
Well, not a lot. I'm still learning about it. We have the Powell memo, and that he wrote that just a few years before he was put on the Supreme Court. And then you had these 1976 and 1978 rulings, which have been built onto as recently as the Citizens United decision, which was about 6 years ago now. And that was the real bad one that just allows corporations, Supreme Court decides corporations are people, and they can spend as much money as they want to on controlling our political system. And with enough money, you can buy elections. It's done all the time. Unfortunately, that's a sad fact, but true. So you had a whole, with Powell, and we had the conservative party, the Republican Party has basically been the ones to put a lot of members on the Supreme Court, and the people that have just been put on support, corporations. And they support low taxes, and that's the big thing. They're not the balancing force that they need to be. Like Marcus said, they were put in to do a job, and the country. We'll see a little music video later that I kind of put together, and I put it, I dedicate it to the Supreme Court. It'll be coming up.
All right. Yes.
And you dedicated the slide to Louis F. Powell Jr.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So that's it for that. We have a bunch of things that we wanted to cover. Here's one: California family found dead on hike, killed by extreme heat.
Yeah, the entire family, their dog and child. They had a 1-year-old daughter. It's very sad, and the man was originally from the UK, and he married. I think, I'm not sure where his wife was from. I think she's American, Asian descent. Doesn't matter. Anyway, they were living in California, and they went on a hike because they're into that sort of thing. And when they started out with 70 degrees, nothing wrong. And they got within almost completed the hike, which is like about 7 miles long. And they were about a mile from the end, and they died. And it was hard to determine. I guess it's hard to determine these kinds of deaths, but it got up to 107 degrees that day. A fire a few years ago had destroyed the trees along the trail, so there weren't many places for shade, and they drank all the water they had. They didn't take enough, and it's very, very, very sad. It got to be 109 degrees, and they died. And climate change, anyone?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So
I just brought that in for the climate change connection, and just to mention, very sad. So let's move on to the next one then.
Yeah. You have a video here.
Yeah.
I'll play it. Here we go.
Yes, parts of the West got rain on Friday, but the more intense atmospheric river event is coming this weekend, and that's the one that could get rated a Category 5. In case you're wondering, the proposal to create a rating system for these came almost 3 years ago, and a 5 is the highest on the scale. Friday's rains caused mudslides in the Dixie Fire burn scar area, and the bigger storm, as we mentioned, hasn't even arrived yet. That is coming Sunday into Monday. Matter of fact, the National Weather Service is saying the atmospheric river Sunday could contain a record amount of moisture for October for the Bay Area and Central Coast. The impacts could be dangerous flash flooding and debris flows off of other recently burned areas, and some very dangerous travel for unsuspecting drivers, plus, of course, road closures. Now, as far as the amounts go, most of Northern California will pick up at least 3 inches of additional rain through Monday. The coastal ranges of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California could see more than 5 inches of additional rain, and the higher elevations of the Central and Southern Sierra could pick up 1 to 3 feet of heavy wet snow through Monday. And by the way, the extended outlook keeps the precip above average for the Pacific Northwest through Halloween. Some rain's going to make it into thirsty Southern California, but guys, this isn't a drought or wildfire buster, unfortunately. A landslide in
but it is
California's
an atmospheric
Dixie
river
Fire
of
burn
rain
scar area on
that has
Friday,
as much
pushed
water as
directly
the
over
Mississippi
a
River
highway at
coming
the
at
bottom of a
Northern
scorched
California.
hillside. While this wasn't
Wow.
a disaster, it could be a small preview of things to come. There's the possibility of extremely dangerous debris flows in this area and other parts of the region as storms and rain move through. Now, here's the thing. Land left barren by wildfires is vulnerable to potentially deadly flash flooding and debris flows. And the Dixie Fire, that one started in July and scorched nearly 1 million acres. And it left behind vast burn scars, including the one in Plumas County.
Yeah, look to the
where this
right there, it was
landslide
all
happened.
burned.
Now, unfortunately, as we've been trying to say, a bigger storm is arriving this weekend. Sunday into Monday is going to be very rough in several communities, which are going to get nailed by damaging high winds and heavy rainfall, and parts of the Central and Southern Sierra could pick up 1 to 3 feet of heavy wet snow by early next week.
So our weather reports are starting to look like It's it's like compounding effects of one effect compounding the other one, and like they're starting to work all together to aggravate things.
A little bit of feedback there.
Yeah.
If I was in the weather service business and had enough cynical potential inside of me, then I would try to contact the intelligence services, to connect my weather forecast at the evenings together with the upcoming refugee numbers, with the victims, and all the political cost and of course the capitalistic cost and all the stuff. You can present all the facts, at the evening news, while everybody's having his dinner. For those people who can still have their dinner, at places where they are safe. And, well, this would be a business idea, I guess.
Lovely idea. And we have another segment of that video, the inner city videos.
Right. And this is the one I'm dedicating to the Supreme Court and for supporting capitalism through all the years and what capitalism has done for us. So thank you very much, Supreme Court, for giving us this.
Little town I grew up believing God keeps his eye on us all, and he is still in upon me as I pledged allegiance to the wall. Lord, I recall my little town, coming home after school, flying my bike past the gates of a factories. My mom doing laundry, hanging the shirts in a dirty breeze. And after he trains,
imagine they're bothered by meth
black. It's not that the colors in there, it's just imagination they lack. Everything's the same back in my little town, my little town. My little town, nothing but the death and dying back in my little town. In my little town, I never meant nothing, I was just my father's son. Saving my money, dreaming of glory, twitching like a finger on the trigger of a gun, living nothing but the death and dying back in my little town. Nothing but the death and dying back in my little town. Nothing but the death and dying back in my little town. Nothing but the death and dying back in my little town. Do 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 do. Nothing but the death and dying back in my little town. Nothing but the death and dying back in my little
grips your heart to see this menagerie of shattered lives and people walking around like zombies. Of course, the court was never concerned with whether their money is free speech, because they don't have any money to give. So who cares?
Yeah, they are unimportant in they don't bring any profit to the capitalistic system. So
they don't exist.
Who cares? Yeah, who cares?
Yeah. The audio for that was done by the channel. Man's got his own channel. He's RCROSSH, and the video was from Kim Gary, and that's another channel. And the video's on my channel if you really wanted to go look at it. And I also give credit to those two, the audio and the video there.
Peace Frog, it is the saddest channel probably on YouTube. Human Love Solidarity says Philadelphia is the poorest of America's largest cities. 6, which means Kensington is one of the poorest areas in one of the poorest cities. In Kensington, the violent crime rate is roughly 30% higher, 328 violent crimes per 10,000 residents, than in Philadelphia overall, 242 violent crimes per 10,000 people.
Yeah, it's known as the Walmart of heroin.
Wasn't there something with pursuit of happiness and stuff? And those people don't look very happy, if you ask me.
No.
It's frustrating again. I can only repeat myself. It's so frustrating to see it.
Yeah, I saw another video of the area that had some explanation because in this video also you saw some people in some strange positions, like they're sort of like sleeping upright. And that's caused by, I forget the name of the particular drug, but it's something that came out of veterinary. It's a veterinary drug, and it's mixed with fentanyl. And then the result is that it works out to be like heroin.
Yeah.
But it gives these people, they got a name for it. I forgot what it was called. But anyway, like it's like they're standing up and they're hanging on hangers or something.
Zombies,
right.
All right, and we have a very bizarre story that Marcus has brought us this week. Take it away.
I didn't bring it up. It was Sentner who brought it up. I only saw it, and it directly reminded me of a Gary Larson sketch, comic. And there it is. It's the Midvale School for the Gifted. Well, in Florida, we got a similar case right now. This week we learned that the so-called Sentner Academy, which is trying, if you look at the top of the card, it says cultivate leaders with heart, right at the top. And they call themselves the brain school. The Sentner Academy is the brain school. And you cannot make it up. It is completely things turning upside down. It says it was in the Rolling Stone. It says one Miami private school is so far off the anti-vax deep, and it's enforcing students who get vaccinated to stay home for 30 days following each dose. So they are sending people in quarantine now, which are vaccinated, and according to WSVN, the school's chief operating officer sent a letter to parents of students last week that said, if you are considering, hold on, you took my.
Oh, sorry about that.
If you're considering the vaccine for your Sentner Academy students, we ask that you hold off until this summer, when there will be time for the potential transmission of shedding onto others to decrease.
What?
Yes, it's getting it's getting better. It's getting better. Not once to let the science get in their way, Sentner has created quarantine requirements for students who receive the vaccine. Quote, because of the potential impact on other students and our school community, vaccinated students will need to stay at home for 30 days post-vaccination for each dose and booster they receive and may return to school after 30 days as long as the student is healthy and symptom-free, the letter reads. So it's completely turned upside down. But if you look at who is this guy, who is Sandner, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, to see that he is very close with Trumpers and the right wingers and the anti-vaxxers, of course. And he gave a lot of money to Trump in the past. And
so what he's doing is he's making sure that there are no liberal people in his school. He's making sure that the entire student body is right wing.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, because at the end of the article it says that some parents already took actions and they took their students, their kids from the school because they said they are not founded on science, and we cannot send our kids there any longer. And you're absolutely right. In this case, who is left in those schools? Those people who are silently accepting this or absolutely are ideologically on the line of Mr. Sandner.
He's building a cult.
He's building it absolutely, and this is behind all this is the stupidity and an unscientific procedure. It is exactly what I also assume, that this is the thought behind, to build up, to create leaders with hearts instead of brains, and I don't know what kind of heart it is, but yeah, they decided to do this, and I think he will get also the credits from the Florida governor, right?
I'm sure.
And yes, and it's.
I'm sure they've had lunch together.
Yes, absolutely, and I talked about this to some people who I've met after I read the news, and they looked at me and they told me I was lying. This is a blatant lie. This is not true. This is not happening. I said, no, this is a fact. It is confirmed by the Sandner Academy itself. And everyone here who I told about the story is shaking his head and said, no fucking way. But it's true. It's true.
Then you say only in America.
Yes, I told when I started to explain what's going on, I said already it's America, and they say, okay, yes. After the impression from what they know about America, they are not. They are mildly surprised.
That's very
which
sad.
Surprised me a little bit.
Very sad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there we have some cartoons, to
can the cartoons be funnier than this? You set the bar kind of high.
No. It is absolutely. It is so ridiculous. But the only method behind it is, as you say, he's trying to get cult students, right?
Yeah.
And this is the only explanation for this stupidity, apart from being ideologically so apart from reality, and yes, only in America.
Yeah, well, I have actually talked with people who told me they're not taking experimental medication. I think somebody on this channel also mentioned that, but as we see, it's been used all over the world by now, and there has been very few effects. Some effects. There has been some effects apparently, and maybe it's downplayed too much. But these are not comparable to the devastation that the disease itself can cause. And if you have ear ringing or whatever, and it saved lives, perhaps that's if
your ears are ringing, you're still around to talk about it.
Yeah. So it's very. So that's basically it. I think that I don't think anybody can claim that it's an experimental drug at this point.
Well, it's an ongoing experiment, though.
Well, everything, in that case, everything is an ongoing experiment. But here we go.
Kidding you.
I have a bully problem at school. Did you tell your mom?
Did you tell your mom?
It is my mom.
Yeah. And in this case, it is not the parents; it is the school board, right? And this makes it, so crazy. You know?
Yeah, a lot of school boards.
You can have some crazy parents, who are on the barricades, but a school board doing this is exceptional.
I know, Julie, nobody's telling vaxxed people to quarantine for 2 weeks. There's no point in that. They're not even getting a virus payload, like a weakened virus payload in most cases. If it's an RMNA vaccine like the Pfizer or the Moderna, it's not even a full virus. So there's really no chance in hell that somebody could contract it by having that thing. The only thing that can happen is if the drug is potentially injected without aspiration, meaning that you don't pull blood back. That's been an issue that was raised by a nurse teacher in Britain that's been covering this topic throughout.
Right, but he says it only happens about 1 in 2,000 times.
Correct, and that may explain why the responses are also very rare of myocarditis or whatever. But nevertheless, there might be a connection between the way they're injecting straight into veins accidentally. Because they're not testing to see whether the blood coming back when they jab you. So that's been an issue. It's not been addressed in the U.S. and in other countries. It's not being it's being hushed down more.
Let me just say, give an opinion about that. That's one thing I really think is messed up, because that the politicians are the people pushing vaccines are tempted to just push them, and they don't think that pulling it back to make sure you're not going into a vein is important. They're in their minds, most important thing is to get everybody vaccinated.
Right.
And they may want to look the other way and let some people that aren't quite as qualified as maybe some people would like them to be, thinking that putting out this information might interfere with the vaccination program. But I think it's irresponsible.
It's just a matter of training, and they're like, at this point, I suspect at this point they're trying to save face, even though it's clear that the administration of the drug is done against the recommendations of the drug companies, of the vaccine companies, which require aspiration, require you to test whether blood's coming back if you're pulling on the plunger. So there's really no reason not to do that. It may add a few seconds to a vaccine, but it's well worth it. Even if there's the tiniest chance that might be a cause that aggravates a response. And if this is the case, if he's right about this theory, then that means that the vaccine is even more safe than we thought, because then even the cases that we do see of negative responses are due to the incorrect application of the vaccine, not the use of it in general. So.
Well, the important thing also to recognize there is that even if you were to get a negative effect from the vaccine, had you not got the vaccine and had you got COVID, your likelihood of getting COVID and having a worse result from the myocardia, I believe it's called,
right, myocarditis,
it's worse than getting the vaccine. The vaccine might give it to you, but only so bad. Where if you get it from the disease, it is worse. Well,
you don't want any myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart. Here's another cartoon. I don't know if you've heard news, but there was a guy who was kicked out by police. It was videotaped, kicked out of the subway because he addressed the police and asked them why they weren't wearing masks. Instead of putting the mask on, they just assaulted him and took him out of the subway.
Really?
Yeah, it was videotaped, and now it's been published, and now unfortunately the mayor is struggling not to. I mean, he depends on the police. He's trying to maintain some sort of working relationship with them, so it doesn't look like anything will happen to those cops. But
could he
it's
at least
a shame.
suspend them for 3 days?
To protect and serve. Oh my God.
Yes, protect and serve. So our next story is this thing, and that's been completely under the radar. If you're just getting your news from mainstream media, you probably didn't hear anything about it. The only mention I've managed to track back is something from Reuters, and even that was very vague and like kind of like not really suggesting, not really giving the information in the context. In a true context, kind of hiding the fact that what the U.S. role in it is and so forth. So what happened was it was revealed this week by Eduardo del Castillo in Bolivia, that they found out that there were people that came into the country in order to assassinate the prime minister, the new elected president, Arce, who was running in opposition to the fascist previous government that kind of trampled on minority rights of ethnic groups and had a lot of crackdown on liberties. He won. And right before he won, a group of people that's described as Colombian mercenaries, which happened to be exactly the same group of people that later murdered the Haitian Prime Minister Moïse.
They're headquartered in Miami, aren't they?
Yes, their headquarters is in Miami, which raises the question of how did this. I'm not going to say that there's finite proof that the U.S. was involved in it, but at the very least, I cannot imagine that the U.S. Was not knowing of it when their headquarters was in Miami. There is a movement of a lot of money in the process, and to imagine that the CIA had no inkling that this was going on is kind of, to me, raises a red flag. So we're talking about
contractors may be involved.
Yeah, and further, they know that the previous government's representatives, Colombian, of the Bolivian government, the right-wing government that preceded it, were involved in conversations in meetings with those people at the Marriott Hotel as they were there to assassinate the leading candidate. This is all being investigated. They showed the proof. They brought it to the media, and this is kind of not even a blips on the radar of the U.S. media. This is kind of alarming. At the same time, Blinken, our progressive representative, Secretary Anthony Blinken, went and visited both Colombia and Ecuador, and here's him saying, "It was a pleasure visiting Ecuador this week. It was sorry, I'll bring it into the. It was struck by the city of Quito's stunning beauty, and even more by the incredible opportunity the United States and Ecuador have to work together to strengthen democracy in the region and deliver for our people." Now, if you don't know anything about South America, you probably know that Ecuador is not a democratic country, and there's been a lot of issues with drug issues and so forth, and corruption. And not only that, he's gone to Colombia, and he said the same thing about Colombia. He said, he says here, I look forward to our continued partnership. And then he also there's a quote of him down here saying, I must say I applaud his leadership, talking about Ivan Duque, the leader of Colombia, who is a narco trafficker himself. He's involved with a lot of drug people, and there's been hundreds of people that were extrajudicially executed because of opposition to his regime. And so he says, simply a model for the region, and in many ways a model for the world. Now, if this is showing anything about how we associate as democracy, if we have that in common with Colombia, God help us. And perhaps that's the case. But that would be very, very sad. I understand when you're trying to bring people into the folds by diplomatically engaging them and keeping the lines open. But when you're looking at that, they're flirting with these right-wing governments, and at the same time, the U.S. launching a boycott on Venezuela. It just brings to question what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? Like, just the position is.
Amos, don't you see the opportunities, man? It's opportunities. The opportunities are in Colombia and Ecuador, and there are no opportunities in Venezuela. It's that easy in a capitalistic system.
But that is.
I gotta tell you guys.
Yeah.
You know, a long time ago, I worked in a hotel. This is before I got a college degree or anything. I'm working my way through school. And I'm working in this hotel. And it's one of the finer hotels in Seattle. And they had this School of Americas thing going on. And all of a sudden, all these South American generals and admirals, and they showed up and you know, out of these limousines, and they were having, you know, the checking into the hotel, and they were having this huge weekend-long class in like how to run South America. And like, I never saw so much scrambled eggs and gold and these guys in their uniforms. I mean, South America's got the best looking military uniforms in the whole damn world. I got to tell you. Anyway, so you know, one of these guys, one of these South American generals, you know, they came up to me. I'm working as a bellhop. That's what my job was. And he just came up and he struck up a conversation with me. You know, he asked me a few questions, and, oh, you go to school, you have a girlfriend. Okay, I can talk to you. And so then, you know, I asked him what it was. And he told me, they fly us up, they teach us things, we go back. And, you know, that's what I learned about what America does with South America. And it really has never changed. It's going on right now.
Right. And what's
I hear about Venezuela, I mean, they got Jon Stewart pushing their bullshit on you know, national media news.
And what's cynical about it, Keith? And what's cynical about it? It's a
complicated situation, you know, and none of the Americans, you know, that the mainstream media is not talking about. When they're talking about Venezuela, they don't talk about, you know, the economic sanctions we put on their ass and how, you know, they can't buy anything because we won't let them buy anything. And gee, maybe they're suffering as a result. But, you know, it's a complicated issue. But, you know,
well, it is a complicated issue, but it's certainly.
And, you know, this is 100% bull. You know, the American attitude towards South America has been for over 100 years, that it's a colony. And they don't do anything unless it benefits us.
Keith, but it's cynical because the Antony Blinken at some point even stated that the U.S. has not always backed the right governments in the region.
Oh.
And obviously they're doing it again. They're doing it right now. They're opposing governments that have not harmed anyone except for dealing with their country maybe in a way that we find distasteful, and maybe there's justification for their criticism. But countries like Venezuela, they're not aggressive outwards, and meanwhile we're cracking down on them. Look at Colombia and how it's doing harm around it. It's doing harm to this country because there's drugs coming from this country. And we're calling them democracy, a model to the world? What is this administration doing? And how are we going to get out of this cycle if we're continuing down the wrong path? We're continuing down the wrong path. You have the vice president of the U.S. supposedly working on solving the issues at the source countries in order to reduce immigration and asylum seeking into the U.S. And what is she doing? What is she doing? They have now created a certain center in the U.S. that will help prosecute and go after people that are doing corruption in Latin America. What business do we have as a country? That's not even I don't think it's even legal in terms of global international law to intervene in somebody else's country. I understand the complexities and the difficulties, but they're going about it the wrong way, man. And I think it's going to blow up in our face. And we're talking about this is our left of the political aisle. Where are we going to go if that blows up in our face?
Well, I'm not familiar with the political environment in South America, but I raised the question now: what did Ecuador and Colombia different than others? I guess they did not privatize any natural resources companies, right? And like other South American
you mean Venezuela?
Example, yeah. I don't know about Venezuela, but Bolivia, for example,
Bolivia and Venezuela, yeah, there is mostly on the socialist side.
The moment the privatization was off the table of gas fields, etc., the same moment they were the political enemies.
Right. And
that's the answer to the question: opportunities.
Right, and the Trump administration was caught with their pants down when they were trying to push Venezuela around and force Maduro out and practically stage
exactly.
We now know it was an imaginary coup that they picked someone a right-wing politician in Venezuela who ultimately failed, and they tried to replace the government there with somebody who would associate better with American fossil fuel companies and other investments. Yes. That was during Trump's administration, but I don't see any difference.
In former times, it was the political resources which had to be compatible with American resources, if you want. So, if you look at Salvador Allende or at Panama, or I don't know how many are there, right? For example, Allende was the democratic elected leader of his country, and what happened? The coup happened. Supported by CIA.
Yeah, and the fact that Blinken I don't see much difference in what Blinken's doing and what the Trump administration is doing, sadly, and I think that if that doesn't get you mad as hell, that's not good, because we're the residents of this country, we're the citizens, and we have to stop it. There's nobody else that can stop this kind of bullying on the international stage.
People got to get informed. This bullshit goes on because people are not informed. They don't understand the horrible things that have gone on down there, and like now the climate issue, all sorts of people coming up from Central America because they're everything's failing and they're not safe, and they come up here and our right wing calls them criminals. They're illegal,
Yes.
And
why?
Who created the conditions for them not to be able to live? You know, I mean,
yes, and if you look at it from a geopolitical point of view, why didn't America in the past decades take care that South America would develop to a prosperous region? You know, because economically, America would have gained their plus from it. You know, they would have gained more from it than the situation is today. The same question I can ask: what is going on in America itself? You know, why is the situation as it is? You know, I think it is the scenario is pushed on the people. You know, to be permanently on the center that something very bad might happen. You know, be it with the country, be it personally, but it is always a stress level. You know, America keeps the countries and their own people permanently under stress for what? What do they gain from this permanent stress? You know, I'm honestly asking this question. You know, how could South America or South America and Central America look like today? You know, if there was a real togetherness, you know, that everyone was taking care that the country would be developing, right? From the economical standpoint, I think it would be a huge market for American products, right? If you want to put it in a capitalistic way.
Yeah, you would think, but we're going to drive.
It's all about exploitation instead.
Yes.
You know, see, to answer your question, yeah, overall, the people down there, the people up here would be better off if there had been, you know, humane considerations from the beginning.
But it's not wanted.
No, because a small minority benefits, and that's why.
Yes.
A small minority makes the decisions, and they benefit, everybody else suffers.
Exactly, and this is why we are seeing the Supreme Court as it is. We are seeing the judges' decisions as it is, because we have no fucking say in all this.
I guess that's the theme for the show today.
It's a corporate America. Period.
And I don't know if you're aware of the news, but there was they went after certain individuals that they are prosecuting certain non-American citizens, citizens of Colombia and so forth that have been implicated in supposedly money laundering. Now, what did these guys do? They were trying to get around the boycott to help Venezuela. So you can't import certain food, medicine, and so forth. The people there are hurting, even though the Venezuelan government is trying to distribute food free whenever they're able to poor people. We're trying to stop that. Our government is trying to stop that, and these people were trying to get around that, and they were charged as it's charged in American courts for money laundering. And so again, this I don't know how that plays into international law. Whether there's any point that they can really put them in prison locally if they're not American citizens, but that's a question to a legal expert. But there's something wrong in it. There's something definitely very, very wrong at the core.
Yeah.
Wow, we have a long show today. Let's roll up with our.
Let's roll it, man.
Roll it with our.
What do we have? The Freedom to Vote Republican Act. Are there 41 senators who would filibuster your right to cast this ballot? If no, go on the next page. If yes, go home.
Yeah.
We better not start talking about the filibuster. It'll be another hour.
Yes. Let's save it for the next show. Yes, and this cartoon is so ridiculous, right? How do I keep doing this to myself? You know, you are Democrats. You ought to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Chin.
Oh, geez. Yes.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, he had a town hall meeting
He did, and I watched the whole thing. It was very nostalgic, and there's a lot of good stuff in that bill. I mean, definitely, it's a step forward.
But not with cinema mention in it.
So far,
rising inflation, consumer prices up, food and gas and energy costs up. Is anything going down? Your popularity rating, sir.
Yeah, I'm afraid that what's that kind of bird?
Yeah.
What's this?
Buzzard.
Build back better. Be patient. Mansion and cinema nail the door shut.
Yeah, just as I said.
But we are all focusing on Mansion and cinema. Not a single Republican has joined Democrats. The only thing that was passed is the John Lewis bill, which thank God has happened.
Did you expect anything from the Republicans? I mean, the majority is on the Democratic side. Fucking shit. You know, and they don't even get their own people managed.
That is exactly the tactic here, is to stop the Democrats from doing anything and then blame them on the discourse, because there's two Democrats that are not even on the same page. So
if you really do the recount, you will see that you don't have 51 Democrats, you have 49 Democrats, and the rest are Republicans.
48 Democrats and the rest are Republicans.
48, yeah. No, we are 51, right? 51 Democrats.
Oh, you're talking about there's an independent, but I don't consider Manchin and Cinema Democrats.
If you subtract Manchin and Cinema, then you got 49.
Then you have even less. Anyway,
less?
Yeah.
Anyway. Your turn.
So we have 1980, a rising tide lifts all ships. In 1990, same thing. In 2000, the same thing. In 2020, still not catching on, are you?
Yeah.
How true.
How true. Yeah. And here are the oligarchs at their lounge.
The Klepto Club.
At the Klepto Club.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's inflationary. The obscene price of our undue influence.
Yeah.
Record political fundraising, says the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And here's Biden with his
The
notepad.
Klepto Club.
Yeah, it's cool, huh? Klepto Club is cool.
Biden with his notepad. Build back better. Scribble on the cheap. Scribble. Coalition to reform the filibuster. Scribble. A democracy. Script.
FDR, LBJ.
SOS.
Yeah, this is a good one. Yeah.
I'm a bill on Capitol Hill.
I know this. The bill on Capitol Hill. There was a famous.
That didn't have to
comic.
scare you to death.
Yes.
It's frightening. The
Cinemas.
And here's our supply chain issue in 2020 versus 2021.
We forgot the one before.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's about that school in Miami there.
Yeah. A champion of freedom, independence, liberty, protesting injustice, refusing to take part in pointless mandated procedures. Fire that son of a...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the GOP House of Frights.
Yeah, this is also nice.
Immigrants, socialism.
Somebody
ate my brain.
Yeah, the best one is the last one, I think. Okay, now we are getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, it was tragic what happened with Alec Baldwin and the stuff there, right?
Oh yeah.
But apart from this, they all look a little bit like him, right? I saw a movie lately with him and Edward Norton where he was playing an ice cold capitalistic company boss. He was frightening. He was very great in this role, and yeah.
Yeah.
Recount the 20 24 volts.
It's pretty tragic what happened with the set. With I think it was a projectile that flew out of a gun.
Yes, I
instead of a
read
blank.
today an article about it. It says it can happen that there are parts from if the gun was shot and there are still parts in the barrel. Is it the barrel? In the
barrel.
gun?
Yeah.
Yes, and the next shot with its gas is normally used for this. The next shot could catapult this missing piece out of it, and it seems like this happened exactly. It was no real ammunition in it, but it might be this way. It was the same. The article said what happened to Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee, in the 90s. You know.
Yeah. Very sad. All right, and we have a donation from Al Wolski. Thank you so much, $10 in honor.
Thank you, Al.
He says, in honor of Scott Galindas, who wrote, "Private insurance has failed me all of my life."
All of my life.
Just before he paid the highest price for healthcare, his life.
Yes, Scott. Yeah.
And also to mention, it was brought to our attention to regarding the book Ministries of the Future. So it's a recommended reading by some. So, all right, who's taking us out today, Marcus?
That's suicide, isn't it?
This is Generación Suicida. It's a band from the south of Los Angeles, and from what I read, one of the real pissed off punks. You know, they are very political, and they are singing against the bullshit, if you want so, or they are doing punk rock against the bullshit. And I found them on KEXP, which is one of my favorite channels. Meanwhile, because they bring a lot of interesting music, a lot of interesting artists, and a lot of great live music. And I can only recommend this to everyone. KEXP, or the other channel I'm using was Tiny Table, I guess it was. Tiny Table. If you want to look it up, do this and support them. They are doing a really good job. Yes. Generación Suicida Desaparece, I hope I pronounced it correctly, is our last song for today. And, it was great to be with you guys, to listen to Patty before. Lots of great information I got from her, and it was fun. I hope you guys in chat also have fun with us here and enjoyed our show, and be there next week. Any last words, Keith?
Hopefully, I'm not sure if I'll be here next week, so we have to keep it open. I hope I will, but I'm not 100% sure yet.
So you will see us next week or the week after.
To mention just if we're going to break down some of the segments from this show, so you can definitely share those if you have a particular person you have in mind that would be interested in any of the particular segments. Just share it with your social media. That's the best way to get the word out. And here we go. Till next time. Bye, guys.
Thank you all for watching. Have a great
conversation
weekend.
today. Very good.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Oh.
No audio.